Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Closing Again. Tonight, Cinco de Mayo Eve. I know what you're thinking. What is Cinco de Mayo? No one seems to know. Well, Cinco de Mayo is basically about one battle that had to do with the French invasion of Mexico. A battle that took place in Puebla. But the story's way crazier and way cooler than you can imagine. So what happened was, in the 1850s, the world had become smaller. There was like trans-Pacific loans, trans-Pacific partnerships throughout the known world, and what we consider now the Western world, the New World. And a lot of this, like also social unrest that started to bubble up, starting with the American Revolution, then the French Revolution afterwards, then Napoleon after that. So there was a lot of change in the air. Well, around the 1850s, Mexico started to go through its own little revolution. And then like the liberal side, backed by Benito Juarez, had started to gain control slowly of Mexico, culminating in them actually gaining power. Well, the problem with that was Juarez had this idea to decide not to pay back the debt that they had owed to France, England, and Spain, or at least to take a 2-year pause of not paying back the debt. Well, rightfully so, the English, the French, and the Spanish were very mad about that. So they created like a triarchy, like a three-headed army or navy force to come and basically strong-arm Mexico into paying back their debt. So England, France, and Spain got together, but little did they know, France had ulterior motives. Under the rule of Napoleon III, France actually wanted to like reach out and maybe grow their sphere of influence throughout Mexico and throughout the New World, and they thought that this might be a good time to do it. So even though under the guise of invading Mexico just to maybe force them to pay back their debt, France's ulterior motives was really to take Mexico and make it part of its French influence. So whenever the three landed in Veracruz and took it over, they were there for a few months, and then like the Spanish and the English were kind of like looking at France like, hey, you guys seem like you don't want to leave here. You guys seem like you want to stay here forever. And the French were like, bet, we want to stay here forever. What? So the French were starting to align themselves with the conservative parties in Mexico to undermine the current ruler, the liberal Juarez. And then all this happening, it led to a full-on invasion. See, the English and the Spanish thought they were just going to go there as leverage to kind of like threaten Mexico, not necessarily invade it. Well, the French were like, no, we really want to invade it. We really want to take this whole place. So the English and the Spanish were like, peace, we're out. We're not doing this. The French stayed. Napoleon III sent more reinforcements over, and along that time, the American president, Abraham Lincoln, was really, really mad about this. And him and his Secretary of State made a big old show in Congress about like how the French should not get involved. However, we couldn't do anything about it, we being the Americans. Couldn't do anything about it because we had our own problems. The Civil War. Yeah, same time, same exact time. 1861, of course, America doesn't want any kind of European power sitting hold in America, especially in Mexico, right next door to America. But we couldn't do anything about it because we had our own problems. And Lincoln didn't want to do something to piss off the French even more, because he definitely didn't want the French to come in on the side of the Confederacy. So the United States had to not be able to help Juarez at all. This leads to Cinco de Mayo. So the French generals end up going in past Veracruz, past Culiacan, and they end up getting to Puebla. At Puebla, 5,000 French soldiers were stopped dead in their tracks by a couple thousand Mexicans. And this would become known as the Battle of Puebla. And that happened on Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May. That's where everyone gets the big thing about. But that's not the end of the story at all. At all. The story's just getting started here. So the French get pushed back. Napoleon sends more troops across the Atlantic, sends Austrian troops as well, and they end up bursting past Puebla, capturing Mexico City. Napoleon sends his cousin Maximilian I out of Austria to become, get this, the first Mexican emperor. Yeah, I know. And all along the time, the conservative parties in Mexico are kind of aligned with the religious right of Mexico, like the Catholic side of Mexico. So they're like basically helping Maximilian get settled in as the emperor. Well, flash forward a year, as it turns out, Maximilian, even though he's like a puppet of France and perceived to be on the side of the right wing in Mexico, turns out he's a liberal kind of dude. He kind of likes the Mexican people, and he kind of doesn't really mind a lot of the reforms they're doing. So it's a weird spot that he's not conservative enough for the conservatives in Mexico, but also definitely not good for the liberals in Mexico because they don't want foreign rule. He ends up being betrayed. Yes, betrayed and arrested. Ends up being put to the firing squad. Maximilian I, first emperor of Mexico, has a show trial and is killed by firing squad. Up there on the dais, he gives a speech saying that he's of noble birth and he never meant to be anything but a supporter of Mexico, that he loves his adopted country. He says that he doesn't mind being a martyr. And the last words that Maximilian, first emperor of Mexico, last emperor of Mexico, says is, "Viva Mexico." Pretty cool story, huh? See you guys tomorrow when we celebrate Cinco de Mayo with some Coronas. Remember, now you know.